There comes a moment in every man's life when the noise of the world becomes too loud, when the voices of doubt, distraction, and mediocrity drown out the whisper of destiny. And in that moment, the strongest among us do something terrifying. They disappear, not because they are weak, not because they are defeated, but because they know that in silence, transformation begins. What happens when a man vanishes into the shadows of his own making? What happens when he walks away from everything familiar, only to rebuild himself into something the world has never seen? This is the power of disappearance. They will not understand you when you decide to disappear. They will call it strange, they will call it selfish, they will call it unnecessary. But history has shown us that the greatest transformations in human destiny have always begun in silence, in solitude, in that mysterious place where the world cannot see you, but your spirit begins to awaken. Think of the caterpillar. No one praises its crawling, no one admires its form until it vanishes. It withdraws from the noise of the world, enters its cocoon, and becomes unseen. But in that disappearance lies the sacred alchemy of transformation. When it reemerges, it is no longer bound to the earth. It takes flight, carrying colors that the world had never imagined possible. Human greatness follows the same law. To transform, you must dare to disappear. Look at the life of Henry Ford. Before he became the name etched into the very bones of industry, before his machines reshaped civilization, he spent countless nights alone, dismantling engines, sketching ideas, listening to ridicule. People mocked his obsession. They could not see what he was building inside. His disappearance was not a retreat. It was an investment into vision. And when he returned, the world no longer recognized him as the same man. He had reinvented himself, and with it, he reinvented society. Disappearance is not running away. It is choosing to step back so you can step forward with more force than the world can resist. It is not hiding from life. It is preparing to live at a level beyond ordinary imagination. When Abraham Lincoln lost election after election, when business failed, when grief buried his heart, he withdrew, not in defeat, but in reflection. In the silence of failure, he discovered his true calling. And when he reemerged, he rose to the highest office, carrying a clarity forged in solitude, strong enough to hold a divided nation together. This is what Napoleon Hill meant when he wrote of desire, of burning purpose, of the discipline of mind. You cannot awaken your true vision in the chaos of endless noise. You cannot hear your inner calling while the world drowns you with distractions. The man who wishes to transform must first learn the art of disappearance. You must disappear from the approval of others, because greatness does not grow in the soil of validation. You must disappear from the shallow cycles of endless consumption, because transformation requires fasting, fasting of the mind, fasting of the spirit. You must disappear from the version of yourself that is addicted to comfort, to habits that chain you, to the old story that whispers, "This is who you are." That story is a lie. And the only way to rewrite it is to step away and create a new one in the silence of your own design. Consider Thomas Edison. Thousands of failed experiments, thousands of nights with nothing but ink, glass, and fire. The world thought he had lost his mind. What sane man fails 10,000 times? But Edison had disappeared from their judgment. He no longer lived in their world. He lived in the world of his imagination. And when the bulb finally lit, the same people who mocked his solitude gathered to marvel at his brilliance. This is the paradox of transformation. The world ridicules you while you disappear, but it worships you when you return. If you want to rise, you must vanish. Vanish into discipline, vanish into study, vanish into relentless work, vanish into self-mastery. And there, unseen, in the silence of your own cocoon, you will bleed, you will struggle, You will doubt, but you will build a new self that the old you could never recognize. And when you return, you will not need to announce it. The world will see it in your eyes, in your walk, in the weight of your words. You will have disappeared not to escape life, but to create the life that others only dream about. The act of disappearing is the declaration of war against mediocrity. It is the rejection of the easy path, the refusal to be another drifting soul in a sea of the ordinary. When you disappear, you are telling the world, I will not be distracted, I will not be tamed, I will not be satisfied with crumbs when I was born to feast on the banquet of destiny. But make no mistake, this disappearance is not comfortable. It is not romantic. It is not the glamorous solitude painted in books. It is nights of loneliness, where the silence feels heavier than stone. It is days of uncertainty, where your mind questions if you are mad for chasing a vision no one else can see. It is sacrifice, real sacrifice, the kind that costs you friends, entertainment, fleeting pleasures, the false warmth of shallow praise. Yet every man and woman who ever reshaped the world paid this price. Andrew Carnegie, the Steel King, was not handed power on a silver plate. He was a boy working in a cotton factory, breathing dust, stained with sweat, earning pennies. But within him burned a vision of wealth and influence. While others spent their nights numbing themselves, Carnegie disappeared into learning, into observation, into ambition. He starved his comfort to feed his purpose. And when he returned not as a laborer, but as an empire builder. This is the blueprint Napoleon Hill gave us. Desire so fierce it consumes excuses, faith so unshakable it survives storms, persistence so relentless it becomes inevitable. But to ignite these forces, you must vanish from the noise of the world, because the crowd fears silence. The crowd fears stillness. The crowd lives in distraction because distraction keeps them from facing the truth of their own wasted potential. When Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking creativity, when his early businesses collapsed into bankruptcy, he vanished. He withdrew into a realm that no one else could see. He began sketching a mouse, a character born not of applause but of imagination whispered to him in solitude. That mouse became Mickey, and Mickey became a kingdom. The same world that mocked his failures now bends before his legacy. Such is the power of disappearing to create. Your transformation demands that you disappear into clarity. Clarity of who you are. Clarity of what you want. Clarity of what you will no longer tolerate. A man without clarity is like a ship without a compass, drifting wherever the winds of circumstance push him. But the man who disappears into self-discovery emerges with a vision so sharp it cuts through every obstacle in his path. Do not be afraid to vanish from the lives of those who cannot understand your hunger. They will call you arrogant. They will say you have changed. They will say you think you are better. But listen closely, these voices are not concerned with your soul. They are concerned with their comfort. Because your transformation is a mirror that forces them to face their own stagnation, and they cannot bear it. This is why Napoleon Hill taught that environment shapes destiny. If your circle cannot breathe the oxygen of your vision, then you must disappear until you can breathe freely. Do not let their smallness suffocate your greatness. Do not let their doubt drown your faith. Build your cocoon, lock the door, silence the noise, and go to work. And in that work, discipline becomes your sword. Discipline is the bridge between the man you are and the man you must become. Discipline is rising before the sun when no one watches, when no one applauds, and doing the work anyway. Discipline is choosing growth over comfort, knowledge over entertainment, purpose over distraction. Discipline is not glamorous, but it is divine. For the man who masters discipline has mastered himself, and the man who masters himself cannot be conquered by anything outside him. Consider the story of Abraham Lincoln again. His greatness was not born on the day he took office. It was forged in years of self-education, reading by firelight, debating himself in solitude, confronting his demons in silence. He disappeared into books. into thought, into the painful journey of self-mastery. And when history demanded a leader strong enough to hold the Union together, Lincoln was ready not by accident, but by preparation in solitude. So I ask you, are you willing to vanish long enough to be reborn? Are you willing to step into the shadows to claim a light brighter than the sun? Are you willing to let go of the person they think you are so you can become the person you were destined to be? Transformation is not an event. It is not a sudden moment. It is a death and a rebirth. It is the breaking of old chains, the burning of old habits, the burial of the old self. And all of it begins when you disappear. When you disappear, you step into the fire that burns away weakness. The man who refuses to disappear clings to his weakness like a blanket. He numbs himself with distractions, with shallow pleasures, with meaningless talk. But the man who dares to vanish walks into the crucible. And inside that crucible, every excuse is burned, every fear is exposed, every lie you've told yourself about your limits is stripped bare. What survives the fire is strength. What survives the fire is truth. Look to the story of Nikola Tesla. He lived in obscurity, often broke, often ridiculed, often forgotten by the very society he tried to serve. But while the world ignored him, he disappeared into his inventions. In silence and isolation, he dreamed of a world powered by invisible currents, of energy traveling through the air, of possibilities the human mind could not yet grasp. And though recognition came too late for him, his solitude birthed ideas that continue to shape the future of mankind. That is the paradox. You may not be applauded in your lifetime, but transformation is not about applause. It is about obedience to the vision placed within you. This disappearance is also a war with your own habits, for the old self will not die quietly. It will beg for comfort. It will whisper, just one more day of ease, one more night of distraction, one more hour wasted. It will call you back to the familiar because transformation is the enemy of comfort. You must learn to silence that voice, to chain it, to bury it beneath the weight of your discipline. Think of Andrew Carnegie again. He said he owed his fortune not just to his vision, but to his ability to control his thoughts, to command his mind like a general commands an army. He disappeared into study of men greater than himself, into mentors, into books, into reflection. While others celebrated, he disciplined his desires. And because he mastered himself, he mastered wealth. This is no accident, it is law. The man who cannot rule himself will never rule anything outside himself. Disappearance also means facing loneliness, and you must not fear it. For loneliness is not a curse, it is a teacher. It teaches you to hear your own voice, to trust your own instincts, to separate your true calling from the noise of the crowd. It sharpens your spirit like a blade. If you are always surrounded, always entertained, always distracted, then you will never know who you truly are. But in silence, in solitude, the truth of your soul speaks. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. The seed grows in the soil of solitude. When you disappear, you plant the seeds of resilience, of focus, of character, and when the time comes, those seeds bloom into strength the world cannot ignore. The world will ask you, 'Where have you been?' And you will answer not with words, but with results. You will return not as the same man, but as proof that solitude is not weakness, it is power. But beware, disappearance without purpose becomes escape. Do not vanish simply to hide. Vanish to build. Vanish with intention. Vanish with vision. There is a difference between running away from life and preparing yourself to live at a higher level. The cocoon is not a coffin, it is a womb. You are not burying yourself, you are giving birth to yourself. Purpose is the compass of transformation. Without it, solitude becomes prison. With it, solitude becomes power. Ask yourself, why am I disappearing? What am I building? Who am I becoming? These questions must burn inside you until their answers light your path. For the man with purpose can endure any isolation, any sacrifice, any trial, because he knows why he suffers. The man without purpose crumbles at the first taste of loneliness because his suffering has no meaning. Look again to Lincoln. His losses, his heartbreak, his endless failures would have destroyed a man without purpose. But Lincoln disappeared into his purpose, the preservation of the Union, the dignity of freedom, the vision of a nation healed. That purpose carried him through storms no ordinary man could bear. Your purpose will do the same if you dare to find it in the silence. So disappear into purpose, disappear into vision, disappear into the discipline of creation, and when you rise from the shadows, you will carry with you the quiet power of one who has been reborn. There comes a point in every man's life when he must choose between being seen by the world and being shaped by the fire of his own silence. Most choose visibility. They crave likes, approval, recognition. They want to be noticed before they are ready. They want applause before they have built anything worth clapping for. But the wise, the ones who rise to greatness, choose invisibility. They choose to vanish because they understand that diamonds are not formed in sunlight. Diamonds are born in darkness, under pressure, in silence. Most stop here, but the real secret starts now. In part 2, I'll show how silence becomes unstoppable power. Subscribe, hit the bell, and comment. What's the first thing you must leave behind to become who you're meant to be?